Another Tuesday. Another batch of primitive species getting themselves into trouble across the galaxy. Quartermaster flexed his 6 fingers and cracked his neck vertebrae, all 4 of them, before settling into his processing chair for what promised to be yet another mind-numbing shift at Galactic Immigration Station Theta 7. The detention center hummed with its usual symphony of despair, ventilation systems wheezing like dying Proximan lungfish, fluorescent lighting flickering with the consistency of a politician's promises, and the faint background sobbing of various species who had discovered that galactic law was about as forgiving as a hungry void shark. "Next, Quartermaster," I called out, his voice echoing through the sterile chamber with all the enthusiasm of a funeral director announcing discount rates. The security doors hissed open, and in walked the most unremarkable specimen he had seen in his 47 cycles of service. 2 legs, how quaint. 2 arms, how primitive. Hair growing only on the top of its head, how absolutely ridiculous. The creature shuffled forward in standard-issue detention shackles, which seemed almost comically oversized for its frame. "Name?" "Quartermaster," A asked, not bothering to look up from his datapad. "Brandon Torres," the creature replied in what passed for universal basic. His accent was thick, mangling the pronunciation like a food processor, attacking vegetables. "Species? Human, I guess." "Look, I already told the other guy all this stuff. Can we maybe speed this up? I've got a connecting flight to catch, and the customer service at this place is really something else." "Quartermaster," A's eye stalks twitched. Did this human just complain about customer service? While in detention? While wearing shackles? The audacity of some species never ceased to amaze him. "Origin planet? Earth. 3rd rock from the sun. You know, the blue and green one with all the water and terrible traffic?" The Quartermaster's fingers danced across his console, pulling up Earth's file. "Backwater planet recently contacted. Technology level somewhere between banging rocks together and figuring out which end of a spacecraft goes forward. Standard primitive classification. Reason for detention?" Brandon shrugged, a gesture that somehow managed to convey both confusion and mild annoyance. "Honestly, your guess is as good as mine. 1 minute I'm trying to find my gate at the spaceport, next minute I'm getting tackled by what I assume were security guards, though they looked more like walking octopi with anger management issues. The Satetian security force takes their job very seriously, Quartermaster," A replied dryly. "They don't tackle people without cause." "Yeah? Well, maybe they should work on their communication skills. All that tentacle waving and bubble blowing doesn't really translate well." "Quartermaster," I sighed. "The sound like air escaping from a punctured atmospheric dome." He reached for his bioscanner, a device roughly the size of a small mammal and twice as temperamental. Standard procedure required a full biological workup of any detained species, DNA analysis, threat assessment, checking for parasites, diseases, or hidden weapons. "Stand still, this will take approximately 30 seconds. He activated the scanner and began the routine sweep, starting from the creature's head. Standard mammalian brain structure, slightly larger than average but nothing impressive. Basic cardiovascular system, surprisingly efficient but again nothing noteworthy. Digestive tract seemed designed for consuming both plant and animal matter. How barbaric. Then he reached the spine. The scanner stopped. Not slowed down, not hesitated. Stopped dead. The display screen flickered, showing a series of error codes that Quartermaster A had never seen in 4 decades of operating this equipment. "Huh," he muttered, tapping the scanner's side with his claw. "Cheap Rigillian technology." He tried again. Same result. The scanner would work perfectly fine until it reached the human's spinal column, then it would freeze like a terrified prey animal. "Is there a problem?" Brandon asked, craning his neck to see the scanner. "Because I've had back problems since college. Something about falling down some stairs at an archaeological dig. Really messed up my lower vertebrae." "Archaeological dig?" Quartermaster A's attention sharpened slightly. "What kind of archaeological dig?" "Oh, you know, just some old ruins. Boring stuff, really. Lots of rocks and broken pottery. The professor said they were probably ancient, but honestly they all look like piles of junk to me. I was just there for the college credit. The scanner emitted a series of beeps that sounded distinctly unhappy. Quartermaster, A frowned, his facial tendrils twitching with irritation. He had processed 17 different species today, including a particularly difficult Andromedan diplomat, who kept insisting his diplomatic immunity extended to bringing his pet carnivorous plant through customs. None of them had caused the scanner to malfunction. Hold still, he ordered, adjusting the scanner's settings to maximum sensitivity. I am holding still. This is me holding still. You want to see me hold stiller? Because I don't think that's physically possible. The scanner hummed with increased power, its internal mechanisms whirring like an overworked air conditioner. Quartermaster A slowly moved it down the human's back, past the shoulder blades toward the mid-spine region where the readings had stopped before. Error. Error. The display screen filled with cascading red warnings, text scrolling so fast it was impossible to read. The scanner's humming rose to a high-pitched whine, then suddenly cut to silence. That doesn't sound good, Brandon observed helpfully. Quartermaster A stared at his scanner, then at the human, then back at the scanner. In 47 cycles of service, he had never seen anything like this. The bioscanner was military-grade, designed to analyze everything from silicon-based life forms to energy beings. It could detect genetic modifications, cybernetic implants, parasitic infections, and even trace amounts of exotic matter. But apparently, it could not scan one unremarkable human spine. What exactly did you fall on at this archaeological dig? He asked slowly. Brandon's face scrunched up in thought. Like I said, just some old rocks. Maybe some metal bits. It was dark and I was probably a little drunk. College, you know. The whole thing was really embarrassing. I ended up in the campus health center for a week. Quartermaster. I set down his scanner and reached for his communicator. This was either a massive equipment failure or something very, very wrong. Either way, it was definitely above his pay grade. Detention center to processing supervisor, he spoke into the device. We have a situation in Bay 7. I need Judge Quintara down here immediately. What kind of situation? Came the crackling reply. Quartermaster A looked at Brandon, who was now examining his shackles with mild curiosity, apparently wondering if they came in different colors. The kind that makes expensive equipment stop working, he replied. And possibly the kind that ruins my day. Brandon looked up cheerfully. Hey, while we're waiting, you wouldn't happen to have any coffee, would you? It's been a really long travel day. Quartermaster A's eye stalks drooped in defeat. Definitely the kind that ruins my day. Judge Quintara arrived 15 minutes later, her forearms crossed in what was universally recognized throughout the galaxy as the "I don't have time for this nonsense" pose. Her carapace gleamed under the harsh detention center lighting, polished to a shine that could blind a Venetian cave bat. She was known throughout the sector for two things: her absolute intolerance for bureaucratic incompetence, and her ability to make grown Regillians cry with a single glare. Quartermaster A, she said, her voice carrying the warmth of liquid nitrogen, explain to me why you have pulled me away from processing 17 different treaty violations to look at a malfunctioning scanner. Your Honor, Quartermaster A began, then stopped. How exactly does one explain that a piece of equipment designed to scan anything in the known galaxy had been defeated by one ordinary human's back? The bioscanner is experiencing technical difficulties. Technical difficulties. Judge Quintara's compound eyes narrowed to slits. Show me. Brandon, meanwhile, had discovered that the detention chair could swivel, and was currently rotating in slow circles while humming what sounded like a primitive earth melody. You know, he said, interrupting the tense moment, this chair is really uncomfortable. Like seriously uncomfortable. Who designed this thing? Someone with a grudge against spines. Judge Quintara looked at Brandon as if he were a particularly puzzling stain on her courtroom floor. And this is the subject causing your technical difficulties? Yes, Your Honor. Watch. Quartermaster A picked up his scanner, which had mysteriously started working perfectly again the moment he moved it away from Brandon's spine. He demonstrated by scanning the detention chair. the wall, even Judge Quintara herself. Perfect readings, clear displays, no problems whatsoever. Then he moved toward Brandon. The human stopped spinning and looked up hopefully. Oh, good. Are we doing the scan thing again? Because maybe this time you could check if I've got any frequent flyer miles stored in my DNA. I bet I've earned enough for an upgrade by now. Quartermaster positioned the scanner at Brandon's head and began moving downward. Skull scan, normal. Neck scan, normal. Upper torso, normal. Middle back, normal. Lower back. The scanner's display exploded into activity. But this time, instead of error codes, words appeared. Clear, unmistakable, impossible words. Marked by the fall of Civilization X. Heir protocol active. Genetic signature confirmed. Await further instructions. Judge Quintara's forearms dropped to her sides. Her compound eyes widened until they resembled dinner plates. A small squeaking sound escaped from her breathing vents. That's impossible, she whispered. What's impossible? Brandon asked, craning his neck to see the display. Did it find something? Please tell me I don't have space parasites. I've got really good insurance, but I bet it doesn't cover interdimensional medical issues. Quartermaster A stared at the scanner display, then at Brandon, then at Judge Quintara, then back at the scanner. His hands were trembling so badly he nearly dropped the device. Your Honor, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, Civilization X was. I know what Civilization X was, Judge Quintara snapped, then immediately lowered her voice and looked around nervously. Run it again. There must be an error in the database. Some kind of corrupted file, or maybe a virus in the system. What's Civilization X? Brandon asked with the mild curiosity of someone asking about the weather. Is that like a really old TV show or something? Both aliens stared at him with expressions of pure horror. Quartermaster. Reset the scanner and tried again. Same result. Marked by the fall of Civilization X. The words glowed on the screen like an accusation. Third time, Judge Quintara ordered, perspiration beading on her carapace despite the detention center's climate control. Third scan. Same result. Fourth time. Same result. Your Honor, Quartermaster A said carefully. I think we need to consider the possibility that this is not a scanner malfunction. Absolutely not. Judge Quintara's voice cracked slightly. Civilization X fell over 50,000 cycles ago. They were the most advanced species in galactic history. They had technology that made our best science look like banging rocks together, Brandon suggested helpfully. Because that's pretty much where we're at on Earth. Well, we've figured out fire and the wheel, but faster than light travel is still pretty new to us. 50,000 cycles, Judge Quintara repeated, as if saying it would make it true. Their homeworld was destroyed, their colonies abandoned, their entire species extinct. There are no survivors. There cannot be survivors. What was their homeworld called? Brandon asked, now genuinely interested. Maybe I've heard of it. Judge Quintara's breathing vents made a sound like steam escaping from a pressure cooker. Sol 3, third planet from a yellow star. They called it Earth. Brandon blinked. Wait, Earth? That's my Earth. You're saying some super advanced aliens used to live on Earth? Not just any super advanced aliens, Quartermaster A said weakly. The super advanced aliens. The ones who built the Galactic Transit Network. The ones who established the first trade routes between star systems. The ones who created half the technology we still use today. The ones who... Cool, Brandon said brightly. So they left stuff behind? Like old buildings and artifacts and things? Because I bet that's what I fell on during that archaeology dig. Some old alien ruins, right? Man, if I'd known they were valuable, I would have grabbed a few souvenirs. Judge Quintara sat down heavily on the nearest chair, which creaked ominously under her weight. Quartermaster A, I need you to run a full deep scan protocol, maximum power, full spectral analysis, genetic pattern matching against every database we have. Are you sure that's wise, Your Honor? If this reading is accurate, Judge Quintara interrupted, then we are looking at the biggest political crisis in galactic history. If this reading is accurate, then this human has just inherited approximately 47% of the known galaxy. Brandon's face lit up. 47%? Sweet. Do I get frequent flyer miles for that too? Quartermaster A and Judge Quintara exchanged glances that conveyed roughly 17 different types of panic simultaneously. Run the deep scan, Judge Quintara ordered, and send an urgent message to Admiral Vashi, Code Black priority. Code Black? Quartermaster. A's eye stalks went pale. Your Honor, Code Black is reserved for galaxy-ending emergencies. Judge Quintara gestured toward Brandon, who was now trying to figure out if the detention table had any hidden compartments. Look at him, she said grimly, and tell me this isn't a galaxy-ending emergency. Admiral Vashi arrived 43 minutes later with enough security personnel to invade a small moon. The Admiral herself was an imposing figure, 8 feet tall, covered in what appeared to be natural armor plating, and possessed of the kind of presence that made seasoned diplomats suddenly remember urgent appointments elsewhere. Commander Tom Melly flanked her right side, his hand resting on what was definitely not a ceremonial weapon. Behind them marched a full security detail, 6 heavily armed Satetian guards, with tentacles twitching in anticipation, 3 Andromedan shock troopers whose crystalline bodies hummed with barely contained energy, and 2 beings that Quartermaster A couldn't immediately identify, but who radiated the kind of menace usually reserved for black holes. Brandon looked up from his continued exploration of the detention furniture. Wow, that's a lot of people. Are you guys here for me? Because I feel like I should mention that I really haven't done anything wrong. I mean, I accidentally took someone's luggage at the spaceport, but I gave it back when I realized it wasn't mine. Admiral Vashi studied Brandon with the intensity of a predator examining particularly confusing prey. You are Brandon Torres, designation human, origin planet Sol 3. That's me. Well, we just call it Earth, but sure. Sol 3 sounds way more official, makes it sound like we've got our act together, which let me tell you, we really don't. Commander Marley, Admiral Vashi said without taking her eyes off Brandon, begin the interrogation protocol. Commander Tom Marley stepped forward, pulling out a device that looked like it had been designed by someone with a severe grudge against user-friendly interfaces. State your full name, age, and occupation. Brandon Torres, 26 years old, and I work in IT support for a company that makes software for accounting firms. It's about as exciting as it sounds, which is to say, not at all. It's support, Judge Quintara whispered to Quartermaster A. What manner of military designation is that? I think it has something to do with primitive computational systems, Quartermaster A whispered back. Like an abacus, but with electricity. Commander Marley consulted his device. Describe your educational background. College graduate, bachelor's degree in computer science with a minor in archaeology. Though honestly I only took the archaeology classes because they were easy credits, and Professor Williams had a reputation for being a pretty lenient grader. Archaeology. Admiral Vashi's voice cut through the detention center like a plasma blade. Elaborate on your archaeological activities. Brandon shrugged. Not much to elaborate on. I went on exactly 1 dig, and it was a total disaster. This was back in my junior year. We were supposed to spend 2 weeks excavating some old ruins outside of town. The professor said they were really ancient, possibly pre-Columbian, but honestly they just looked like a bunch of rocks to me. Every alien in the room leaned forward slightly. Describe these ruins, Commander Marley said, his finger hovering over what was definitely a recording device. Oh man, where do I even start? They were seriously underwhelming. Just these big stone blocks arranged in weird patterns. Lots of metal bits sticking out of the ground. Some kind of chamber or room that went way deeper than it should have. The whole place had this weird vibe, you know, like the air tasted funny, and my phone battery kept draining super fast. Admiral Vashi's armor plating had begun to emit a low humming sound. You entered the chambers? Well, yeah, that was kind of the point of the dig. Though I have to say, the safety protocols were pretty questionable. Professor Williams just handed us flashlights and said, try not to fall down any holes, which, spoiler alert, was exactly what I did. You fell? Judge Quintara's voice had gone up approximately 3 octaves. Oh yeah, big time. There was this staircase really steep, really dark, and apparently really slippery. I was trying to get a better look at some weird symbols carved into the wall, and next thing I know, I'm tumbling down about 20 steps, and landing face first in this chamber full of even weirder symbols. Commander Marley was typing furiously on his device. These symbols describe them. Honestly, they looked like someone had let a toddler loose with a laser cutter. All curved lines and geometric shapes, some of them actually glowing a little bit. I figured it was just phosphorescent mineral deposits, or something. College kids aren't exactly known for their scientific rigor. Admiral Vashi turned to her security team. I need a full research team here immediately. Contact the Galactic Archives, the Archaeological Survey Bureau, and she paused, her voice dropping to a whisper. Contact the Keepers of Lost Civilizations. One of the Andromedan shock troopers made a sound like breaking glass. Admiral, the Keepers haven't been contacted for over 1,000 cycles. Protocol requires approval from the High Council. Then get me the High Council, Admiral Vashi snapped. And tell them we have a code black situation involving Civilization X artifacts. Brandon, who had been listening to this exchange with growing confusion, raised his hand tentatively. Sorry, quick question. What exactly is Civilization X? You guys keep mentioning them, but I've never heard of them. Were they from Earth originally? The silence that followed could have been vacuum-packed and sold as a commodity. From Earth, Judge Quintara repeated faintly. He's asking if Civilization X was from Earth. Well, yeah, Brandon continued, oblivious to the mounting hysteria around him. I mean, if these ruins I fell into were theirs, and the ruins were on Earth, then logically they must have been from Earth. Right. Unless they were tourists or something. Were they tourists? Commander Marley looked up from his device, his face pale. Admiral, the preliminary database search is complete. Sol 3 designation Earth is confirmed as the former homeworld of Civilization X. The ruins he describes match exactly with our archaeological records of Civilization X temple complexes. Temple complexes? Brandon perked up. Oh cool, so it was like a religious site. That explains all the weird symbols. Though I have to say, if they were going for inspiring divine awe, they kind of missed the mark. It mostly just looked like expensive graffiti. Admiral Vashi sat down heavily on the nearest chair, which immediately groaned in protest. He fell into a Civilization X temple complex. He physically made contact with their sacred artifacts, and he describes it as expensive graffiti. The good news, Brandon said helpfully, is that I only broke my tailbone and bruised my ego. The bad news is that I had to write a really embarrassing incident report for the college insurance company. Do you have any idea how hard it is to explain that you injured yourself falling down ancient alien stairs? Quartermaster A, who had been watching this exchange with the fascination of someone observing a natural disaster in slow motion, cleared his throat. If I may, Your Honor, Admiral, the human's medical records from his college. They might contain information about what exactly happened during his contact with the artifacts. Medical records. Admiral Vashi's head snapped up. Commander Marley, contact Earth's medical databases immediately. I want every detail about this human's injuries, his recovery, any anomalies, anything that might explain why a Civilization X artifact recognition system would mark him as an heir. You guys really take this archaeology stuff seriously, Brandon observed. I mean, it's just old rocks and metal bits. Interesting from a historical perspective, sure, but it's not like they're still functional or anything. Although he paused thoughtfully, now that I think about it, some of the metal pieces did kind of light up when I touched them. But that was probably just static electricity, right? College dorms have terrible wiring. The collective sound of several alien species simultaneously experiencing what humans might call a nervous breakdown filled the detention center. He activated the systems, Admiral Vashi whispered. He physically activated Civilization X technology. Yeah, probably, Brandon agreed cheerfully. Though honestly, I was more worried about tetanus. You should see some of those metal edges, really sharp, really rusty. I had to get like 6 different shots when I got back to campus. Commander Marley looked up from his frantic typing. Admiral, we have a problem. Earth's medical databases are primitive. Their record-keeping systems are based on something called paper files and handwritten notes. Much of the information we need may not be digitally accessible. Paper files? Judge Quintara sounded like she was choking. They store critical medical information on organic matter. Hey, Brandon said, sounding mildly offended. Our filing system works just fine, thank you very much. Sure, sometimes files get lost. And yeah, sometimes coffee gets spilled on important documents. And okay, maybe our handwriting isn't always legible, but we make it work. Admiral Vichy closed her eyes and began what sounded like a meditation chant in her native language. Based on the rhythm and tone, Quartermaster Reese suspected it was probably a prayer for patience. Or possibly for a quick and merciful death. General Krafnog arrived 2 hours later, looking like someone had told him the universe was ending, and handed him a clipboard to fill out the appropriate paperwork. The general was old even by galactic standards. His species measured age in geological epochs, and he had personally witnessed the rise and fall of 3 different galactic civilizations. He moved with the deliberate care of someone whose bones were older than most star systems. Behind him rolled a massive data storage unit that hummed with enough processing power to simulate entire galaxies. The device was connected to what appeared to be half the galaxy's archaeological databases, historical archives, and several repositories that Quartermaster A was fairly certain were classified above his security clearance. Admiral Vashi, General Krafnog wheezed, his voice carrying the weight of millennia. I have brought the complete archives of Civilization Engs. All surviving records, all recovered artifacts, all testimonies from the final day. Everything we know about the most advanced species in galactic history. Brandon, who had spent the last 2 hours asking increasingly creative questions about alien bathroom facilities and whether anyone had snacks, looked up with mild interest. Oh hey, more people. Are you guys having some kind of conference? Because if so, the catering situation here really needs work. I haven't eaten since breakfast, and that was like 8 hours ago. General Krofnog's ancient eyes focused on Brandon, with the intensity of someone trying to solve a particularly difficult mathematical equation. So this is the human who has activated the heir protocol. The what now? Brandon asked, perking up. That sounds important. Is that like a warranty program? In a manner of speaking, General Krafnog replied grimly. He gestured to his data storage unit, which immediately projected a 3-dimensional holographic display that filled half the detention center. Behold the final records of civilization. The hologram showed what had once been Earth, but an Earth transformed beyond recognition. Massive cities floated in the sky, connected by streams of light that pulsed with impossible energy. The oceans teemed with structures that defied physics, and the land itself seemed to shimmer with integrated technology. 53,000 cycles ago, General Krafnog began, Civilization X reached the pinnacle of galactic development. They had mastered space, time, energy, matter. They built the first interstellar highways, established the foundations of modern galactic law, and created technologies that we still cannot fully comprehend. Wow, Brandon said, genuinely impressed. That's pretty cool. What happened to them? Economic recession. Climate change? Did they invent social media and destroy themselves with arguments about whether pineapple belongs on pizza? Judge Quintara made a strangled sound. He treats the fall of the greatest civilization in history like a casual conversation topic. They faced an extinction-level threat, General Krafnog continued, ignoring the interruption. Not war, not disease, not natural disaster. Something else. The records are unclear about the exact nature of the threat, but it was sufficient to force them to abandon their homeworld and scatter across the galaxy. The holographic display shifted, showing the magnificent cities going dark one by one, the floating structures falling into the ocean, the very land itself seeming to sleep. But before they departed, General Krafnog said, his voice dropping to a whisper, they created the heir protocol. Okay. Now that definitely sounds like a warranty program. Brandon commented. Did it come with tech support? Because honestly, that would explain a lot about my life. Commander Marley looked up from his datapad. General, the human mentioned unusual electronic behavior. His communication devices function with abnormal efficiency. His technological interactions show patterns inconsistent with his species' technical capabilities. Yeah, that's true, Brandon said thoughtfully. My Wi-Fi never goes down, my phone battery lasts way longer than it should, and I've never had a computer crash on me. I just figured I was really good with technology. You know, natural talent. General Krafnog's expression suggested he was experiencing what humans might call an existential crisis. The heir protocol was designed as a fail-safe. Civilization embedded recognition systems throughout their most sacred sites, temples, archives, centers of learning. If their species ever faced extinction, these systems would identify a worthy successor. A successor to what? Admiral Veshi asked, though her tone suggested she already knew and didn't like the answer. To everything, General Krafnog replied. Their territory, their technology, their accumulated knowledge, their legal standing in galactic affairs. Whoever activated the heir protocol would inherit the full legacy of civilization. Full legacy? Brandon asked. Like everything. Because I feel like there should be some kind of application process for that. Maybe a background check or at least a credit score requirement. According to the archives, General Krafnog continued, consulting his display, the activation requirements were deliberately complex. The candidate had to physically enter a sacred site, make contact with the recognition systems under specific circumstances, and demonstrate compatibility with Civilization X technology. Compatibility? Commander Marley asked. The ability to activate their systems without training, to interface with their technology intuitively, to how do you say click with their machines. Oh, that definitely describes me, Brandon said cheerfully. I'm great with machines. They just sort of work around me. My friends always ask me to fix their computers because I have this weird knack for knowing exactly which button to push, though honestly most of the time I just turn things off and turn them back on again. Quartermaster A, who had been listening to this explanation with growing horror, raised a tentative claw. General, when you say full legacy, exactly how much of the galaxy are we talking about? General Krafnog manipulated his holographic display, which zoomed out to show the current galactic political map. Approximately half of it began blinking in bright blue. 47.6% of all inhabited systems, he said quietly. 12 major trade routes, 38 resource-rich sectors, the primary galactic communication networks, and he paused, his voice becoming even quieter, administrative authority over the galactic transit system. The detention center fell so silent that the hum of the ventilation system sounded like a thunderstorm. Administrative authority. Admiral Vashi's voice cracked slightly. He would control interstellar travel. Wait, Brandon interrupted, waving his hands. Are you telling me that falling down some stairs in college made me the owner of half the galaxy? Because if so, I feel like someone should have mentioned that in the student handbook. That seems like important information to include in the orientation materials. The heir protocol has been dormant for over 50,000 cycles, General Krafnog explained. We assumed it was a theoretical failsafe, a contingency that would never be triggered. The probability of someone accidentally activating it was calculated to be approximately 1 in several trillion. Yeah, well, I've always been pretty good at beating impossible odds, Brandon said. I once won a radio contest by being the 99th caller, and the chances of that were supposed to be really low too. Judge Quintara was staring at the holographic display with the expression of someone watching their entire worldview collapse in real time. He inherited the most powerful empire in galactic history by accident, while drunk. During college. I wasn't that drunk, Brandon protested. Maybe a little tipsy, but I could still walk in a straight line. Well, mostly straight. The stairs were really steep. This explains everything, Commander Marley said, consulting his datapad frantically. The random technological improvements around him, the impossibly good luck with electronic devices, The way every system he touches seems to work better than it should. He's been unconsciously interfacing with dormant Civilization X networks his entire life. Cool, Brandon said. Does that mean I get some kind of user manual? Because I've been winging it this whole time, and honestly, it would be nice to know what I'm actually doing. Admiral Vashi turned to General Kraftnog with desperation in her eyes. Please tell me there's a way to reverse this. Some kind of opt-out clause, a cooling-off period, anything. General Kraftnog shook his head slowly. The heir protocol was designed to be irreversible. Once activated, the transfer of authority is absolute and permanent. Brandon raised his hand. Quick question. Does this inheritance thing come with any kind of timeline? Because I really do need to catch my connecting flight. I've got a job interview on Monday, and my mom will kill me if I miss it. She's been bragging to the neighbors about how I finally got called back for a second interview. The collective sound of several alien species experiencing simultaneous nervous breakdowns echoed through the detention center. He inherited half the galaxy, Quartermaster, Ash whispered, and he's worried about missing a job interview. Well, yeah, Brandon said reasonably. I mean, the galaxy isn't going anywhere, right? But good IT jobs are really hard to find. Emmy Kowalski arrived 30 minutes later with a briefcase the size of a small spacecraft, and an expression that suggested she had been personally betrayed by the universe. As the station's chief legal officer, she had handled everything from interdimensional custody disputes to sentient asteroid rights cases. She was widely regarded as the most competent legal mind in the sector, which made her current predicament all the more tragic. All right, she announced, setting her briefcase down with a thud that shook the detention center floor. I need to explain exactly what legal nightmare we are currently drowning in. Brandon looked up hopefully. Oh good, a lawyer. Please tell me someone has figured out how to fix this whole misunderstanding. I really do need to get to that job interview. Amy stared at him for a long moment, then opened her briefcase and pulled out what appeared to be several thousand pages of legal documentation. Miss Torres, according to the Galactic Inheritance Statutes, the Civilization X Legacy Protocols, and approximately 47 different interspecies treaty agreements, you now legally own the following. She began reading from a list that seemed to go on forever. 12 major star systems, 38 resource extraction facilities, the primary galactic communication networks, administrative authority over interstellar travel, mining rights to 17 asteroid belts, controlling interest in the Galactic Banking Consortium, and she paused to flip several pages. A small moon that apparently serves as a strategic cheese reserve. Cheese reserve? Brandon perked up. What kind of cheese? Because if it's good cheese, that actually sounds pretty cool. Amy ignored him and continued. Additionally, you have inherited what can only be described as the most complicated set of political obligations in galactic history. As the heir to Civilization X, you are automatically recognized as a sovereign ruler by, let me see, 43 different species governments. As if summoned by her words, the detention center doors burst open, and a parade of alien dignitaries began flooding in. First came the Andromedan ambassador, his crystalline body refracting the fluorescent lighting into rainbow patterns as he prostrated himself before Brandon's detention chair. Your Imperial Majesty, the ambassador cried, his voice ringing like wind chimes in a hurricane. The Andromedan Republic humbly requests continued trade agreements and pledges eternal loyalty to your magnificent reign. Imperial Majesty. Brandon looked around confused. Are you talking to me? Because I'm pretty sure there's been some kind of mistake. Before anyone could respond, 3 more ambassadors rushed in. A floating jellyfish-like creature that spoke in musical tones, a robot that appeared to be made entirely of angry geometry, and something that looked like a cross between a tree and a very aggressive accountant. Mighty heir to the throne of stars, sang the jellyfish creature. The aquatic collective begs for mercy regarding our unpaid tariffs from the last 3 millennia. We demand renegotiation of our trade routes, declared the angry geometry robot, sparks flying from its joints. The current agreements are inequitable. Your Excellency, wheezed the tree accountant, we have brought tribute in the form of our finest agricultural products and a complete audit of our planetary tax records. Brandon stared at the growing crowd of desperate alien dignitaries. This is getting really weird, guys. I just want to catch my flight and maybe get some coffee. Speaking of which, does anyone know if this place has a coffee machine? Sure, whatever, he said absently, still looking around for caffeine sources. Just figure it out among yourselves, I guess. The moment the words left his mouth, every piece of technology in the detention center began humming. The lights brightened, the ventilation system shifted to a more pleasant frequency, and somewhere in the distance, an ancient recognition protocol that had been dormant for 50,000 years suddenly activated. Did he just? Amy Kowalski's voice trailed off as she stared at her briefcase, which was now glowing softly and displaying legal documents in languages that hadn't been spoken since the fall of civilization. Oh no, whispered General Kraftnorg. He just issued a blanket administrative decree. The ancient systems are interpreting figure it out among yourselves as an official policy directive. Throughout the station, computer terminals began reorganizing themselves. Trade agreements started rewriting themselves according to protocols that prioritized fairness and efficiency. The Galactic transit system began optimizing routes for maximum passenger comfort rather than maximum profit. Currency exchange rates automatically adjusted to eliminate market manipulation. This is a disaster, Admiral Vesey moaned. He just accidentally reformed the entire galactic economy with 3 words. Brandon, meanwhile, had wandered over to a wall unit that he assumed was some kind of vending machine. Seriously, is there any coffee around here? I'm getting a really bad headache, and caffeine usually helps. The moment he touched the machine, it whirred to life and began producing the most perfect cup of Earth-style coffee anyone in the galaxy had ever seen. The aroma filled the detention center, causing several species representatives to stop their frantic negotiations and stare in wonder. Whoa, Brandon said, taking a sip. This is actually really good. How did it know I like it with just a little cream and 2 sugars? The machine just interfaced with his subconscious preferences, Commander Marley said weakly, consulting his frantically beeping datapad. It's reading his neural patterns and adjusting its output accordingly. That's handy, Brandon commented. Earth vending machines never work that well. You're lucky if you get the right flavor, let alone something that tastes good. Amy Kowalski was now frantically flipping through legal documents that seemed to be writing themselves. Mr. Torres, you need to be very careful about what you say. The ancient systems are interpreting your casual comments as official policy decisions. You just accidentally implemented universal basic income across 17 star systems. I did? Cool. That sounds like a good thing, right? Everyone likes having money. He cannot keep talking, Judge Quintara hissed to Admiral Vesey. Every word he speaks is reshaping galactic civilization. But it was too late. The damage was spreading. Throughout the galaxy, Civilization X technology that had been dormant for millennia was awakening and responding to Brandon's unconscious commands. Space traffic suddenly became more efficient as outdated routing protocols updated themselves. Interspecies communication improved as universal translation systems began prioritizing clarity over bureaucratic complexity. On the planet Regal 7, an ancient monument suddenly activated and began broadcasting a message in Brandon's voice. Just be nice to each other, okay? It's not that hard. 3 solar systems away, a derelict space station came online and started offering free Wi-Fi to passing ships. In the Andromedan Republic, every government computer simultaneously displayed a message reading, "Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again?" "What's happening?" Brandon asked, noticing the increasing hysteria around him. "Did I do something wrong? Because, honestly, I was just looking for coffee. I didn't mean to cause any trouble." Amy Kowalski looked up from her ever-expanding pile of self-updating legal documents. "Mr. Torres, in the last 10 minutes, you have accidentally dissolved 3 different trade disputes, implemented tax reform across 42 worlds, and somehow managed to fix the galactic internet." "Oh," Brandon said thoughtfully. "Well, that doesn't sound too bad. The galactic internet really did need fixing. The connection speed at the spaceport was terrible." Quartermaster A, who had been watching this entire exchange with the fascination of someone observing the end of civilization, raised his hand tentatively. If I may ask, Your Imperial Majesty, what would you like us to do with all these representatives? Brandon looked around at the crowd of alien dignitaries, who were now frantically trying to keep up with policy changes that were implementing themselves faster than they could read them. I don't know, he said honestly. Maybe they could form some kind of committee. People love committees. And while they're doing that, could someone please explain why there's no comfortable seating in this place? These chairs are really terrible for your back. The moment he finished speaking, every chair in the detention center transformed into an ergonomically perfect piece of furniture designed for optimal spinal support across multiple species types. Amy Kowalski buried her face in her hands. He just revolutionized galactic furniture design, she whispered. This is insane. Hey, at least everyone will be more comfortable, Brandon pointed out reasonably. That's got to count for something, right? 3 hours later, Brandon Torres found himself sitting in the most comfortable chair in galactic history, holding a cup of coffee that would have made Italian baristas weep with joy, while accidentally governing half the known universe. The transformation of Galactic Immigration Station Theta 7 into what Amy Kowalski was now calling the most informal seat of power in recorded history had been swift, efficient, and completely bewildering to everyone except Brandon himself. Okay, he said, taking another sip of his perfect coffee, let me make sure I understand this. I own approximately half the galaxy. Everyone wants me to make decisions about things I've never heard of, and somehow my biggest concern is still whether I can get a refund on my original ticket. Admiral Vashi, who had spent the last hour updating her reports to reflect the most unusual regime change in military history, nodded grimly. That is essentially correct, Your Majesty. Please don't call me Your Majesty. It makes me feel like I should be wearing a crown or something, and honestly, hats give me a headache. Just Brandon is fine. You cannot possibly govern half the galaxy from a detention center, Judge Quintara protested, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. The ergonomic chair she was now sitting in had done wonders for her chronic back pain, and she was beginning to see the appeal of Brandon's casual approach to administration. Why not? Brandon asked reasonably. I mean, everyone seems to be doing fine so far. The computers are handling most of the actual work. People are being nicer to each other, and from what Amy tells me, the economy is running more efficiently than it has in centuries. Maybe the secret to good government is just not overthinking it. Quartermaster A, who had somehow found himself promoted to senior administrative advisor simply by being present during Brandon's accidental ascension, consulted his datapad. Your Brandon, the casualty reports from your reforms are unusual. Casualty reports? Brandon looked alarmed. Did I accidentally hurt someone? Because that definitely wasn't the plan. No casualties, Quartermaster A clarified quickly. The opposite, actually. Workplace injuries are down 93% across all Civilization X territories because of your ergonomic furniture initiative. Interspecies conflicts have decreased by 87% since the politeness protocols went into effect. And somehow galactic productivity is up 42%. Politeness protocols. Brandon looked confused. When did I implement politeness protocols? Amy Kowalski looked up from her constantly updating legal documents. When you said just be nice to each other, okay? The ancient systems interpreted that as an official administrative directive and implemented what they're calling Earth Standard Politeness Protocols across all communication networks. Oh, well, that seems reasonable. Being polite is just basic human decency. Basic human decency, General Krafnog repeated slowly, has apparently revolutionized interspecies diplomacy. We are receiving reports of trade negotiations concluding with handshakes and verbal agreements instead of 3-year legal battles. Commander Tom Marley, who had been monitoring communication channels, looked up from his station. Brandon, we're getting requests from 17 different species asking if they can apply for membership in what they're calling the Human Federation. They want to know if membership includes access to the improved coffee and furniture. Human Federation, Brandon laughed. I'm not even good at running my own life, let alone a federation. Though I guess if people want better coffee and comfortable chairs, that's not really a bad thing to be known for. Sir, interrupted one of the Andromedian shock troopers, Your original flight has been indefinitely postponed. The spaceport is currently dealing with approximately 47,000 requests for asylum from beings who want to live under your government. Brandon blinked. 47,000? That seems like a lot. Are they sure they want to live under a government run by someone who got his leadership credentials by falling downstairs? Apparently, Quartermaster said dryly, your governing style is being described as refreshingly competent and surprisingly effective. The fact that you fixed centuries-old problems by accident is being interpreted as evidence of superior leadership skills. That's weird, Brandon said. I literally just wanted coffee and a comfortable place to sit. And in providing those basic necessities, Amy Kowalski observed, you have accidentally created the most popular government in galactic history. Your approval ratings are currently at 94%, which is statistically impossible. What about the other 6%? They're mostly confused about how you managed to implement tax reform while asking for directions to the bathroom. Brandon set down his coffee cup and looked around at the assembled crowd of alien officials, all of whom were staring at him with expressions ranging from bewilderment to something approaching religious awe. Look, he said finally, I appreciate that everyone thinks I'm doing a good job, but I feel like I should mention that I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I work in IT support. My biggest executive decision before today was choosing which flavor of energy drink to buy from the vending machine. And yet, Admiral Vashi pointed out, you have solved more galactic problems in 4 hours than the previous administration managed in 4 centuries. Maybe that says more about the previous administration than it does about me, Brandon suggested. I mean, how hard is it to make sure people have decent coffee and comfortable chairs? These seem like pretty basic requirements for a functioning society. Quartermaster A, who had been taking notes throughout this entire conversation, looked up from his datapad. For the record, Brandon, would you like me to officially register your governing philosophy as coffee, chairs, and common sense? You know what? Sure. That sounds about right. Brandon paused, then added, oh, and maybe add something about Wi-Fi. Good internet access is really important for keeping people happy. As if responding to his words, every communication device in the detention center chimed simultaneously with notifications of network improvements. He just upgraded the entire galactic internet infrastructure, Commander Marley reported, his voice filled with admiration and terror in equal measure. Download speeds have increased by several thousand%. Cool, Brandon said, pulling out his phone to check his messages. Hey, look at that. I've got full bars for the first time since I left Earth. That's actually pretty convenient. Amy Kowalski closed her briefcase with a definitive snap. I give up. I'm officially declaring this the most successful administrative coup in galactic history, achieved through the revolutionary governing principles of basic human decency and customer service. Customer service? Brandon grinned. I like that. Maybe that should be our official motto, the Human Federation, where customer service actually means something. 6 months later, historians would record that the Human Federation had been established not through conquest or political maneuvering, but through one man's sincere desire for decent coffee and a comfortable place to sit while waiting for a delayed flight. Quartermaster A, now bearing the official title of Senior Advisor for Common Sense Implementation, would often reflect on the cosmic irony that the most advanced civilization in galactic history had been inherited by a species that had only recently figured out how to make reliable spacecraft. And Brandon Torres, Emperor of half the galaxy and defender of universal Wi-Fi access, would continue to rule from his ergonomic recliner, occasionally pausing his administrative duties to wonder if his original connecting flight would ever be rescheduled. After all, he still had that job interview on Monday. His mom was going to be so confused when he tried to explain why he'd be late.